Hi everybody, I'm Tony Schaefer from What Drives Us, and this is my ride-along review of the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. Now if you haven't seen my ride-along reviews before, this is where I take a test ride in a car and tell you what it's like. And this way, you don't have to deal with the dealership and go take a test ride for yourself. Or at the very least, you can go into that test ride knowing what to expect. If you would like to see more photos of the car and a walk-around video, make sure you check out my walk-around review, posted also on the What Drives Us channel. Starting in 2019, Toyota has completely redesigned the RAV4. It's got more of a boxy front with a grille instead of that pointy, over-angular front fascia that was 2018 and before. Now, when I first got into this car, I was shocked and a little appalled at how Toyota had made it larger. It's one of these things, cars just seem to get larger as the years go by. The thing is, I then went online and looked up the numbers to compare the overall size, and it turned out that they hadn't changed anything. From 2018 to 2019, even with all of the redesign, they are identical. So what was it that made it feel like it was so large to me? And I think it might just be the overall shape. Instead of coming to a point at the front, it's more blunted and square. And that just kind of gave the impression that it was larger. Sitting in the RAV4, it just feels large. And I don't know how they did it. It's very TARDIS-like that it seems to feel larger than it actually is. Plenty of shoulder room, plenty of headroom. I truly believe that mom, dad, a couple of kids would be very comfortable in this car, even for long drives. I sat in the back seat, and except for the middle position, the hump position, if you will, the left and right seats, very roomy and extremely comfortable. If there's no one sitting in the middle, an armrest folds down with a couple of cup holders. So yeah, for a family of four, I would recommend the RAV4. It's a really good size. It's not small to be cramped, and it's not overly huge. The RAV4 does have a decent amount of cargo space. With the seats up or the seats down, there's a lot of room back there to store and haul a lot of things. Now that might create the situation in which you have so many things in the back that you can't see out the back through the rearview mirror. And that's where Toyota has thought about this and incorporated a camera, especially in the back, that feeds the display, yes, display, that is the rearview mirror. You simply flip the switch and the rearview mirror turns into a rearview camera. And it's not just for backing up. You already have a dedicated backup camera. This camera works even when you're moving forward so that you have an unobstructed view behind you, even when the view is obstructed from what you have in the cargo area. The dashboard in front of the driver here is a combination of digital and mechanical. I'm assuming the mechanical bits and pieces are borrowed from the conventional RAV4. On the left, you can see your energy consumption and usage with eco power and charge. On the right, you have your fuel gauge and your engine temperature gauge. The middle is where all your information is. And what's really neat about what Toyota has done is you have two different options on how you can display the information. One is a straight digital, and the other simulates a round analog dial. Now, in my opinion, the round analog dial is a little too crowded for my tastes. I switched it over to digital, and in my opinion, it's a much cleaner look. I'm much happier with this. They seem to have really downplayed the hybrid part of the RAV4 Hybrid, and I'm fine with that, to be perfectly honest. I know that some people want to have the hybrid information and the mileage and everything just smacking them in the face every chance they get, but I'm not really like that. I do geek out, don't get me wrong, on the hybrid parts, but I understand that some people just want a RAV4 that can seat 5, haul stuff, and just also happens to get killer mileage. And to that end, you could just hide all the hybrid stuff and just drive the car as a car. One of the more, in my opinion, comical aspects of the RAV4 is the size of the air conditioning knobs. The driver has a rotary knob to control their temperature. The passenger has a rotary knob to control their temperature. They're huge. I mean, silver dollar size at least. Compare this to the volume, which is maybe a nickel, maybe a dime. So the volume buttons are tiny, and the air conditioning temperature control knobs are massive. And I don't know if that's supposed to give it a rugged look or something, but quite frankly, considering that most of the other knobs and buttons are on the smallish side, having these two huge knobs sticking out, they just really don't seem to fit the overall interior aesthetics. Is that a really super bad thing? Should that keep you from buying the car? I don't think so. I just find it interesting that someone decided to put knobs of that size in this car. One feature we're seeing more and more, especially in larger cars these days, is the bird's eye view. And the RAV4 has cameras in the front and the back, one on either side. And when you're at a slowish speed, you can push a button here on the left, and it will display a bird's eye view on the infotainment screen. And that's really nice. If you're navigating in parking lots, or if you have a driveway that you have to maneuver, it is really good to be able to pull up a bird's eye view and see exactly everything that's around you. Now, a warning, you still have to be aware of your surroundings. If you're interested in alternative fuel vehicles and the future of the transportation sector, make sure you check out the What Drives Us channel on YouTube. Every Wednesday night, we record live shows, and every once in a while, when we get a chance, we test drive alternative fuel vehicles like the RAV4 Hybrid. Make sure and check all the reviews that we have online. And if you find any of them interesting or educational and hopefully informative, make sure and subscribe to the channel, and you'll be notified every time we release a new video. I happen to be driving the limited RAV4 Hybrid, which is the top tier package, and it comes with heated and ventilated seats. Let me tell you, if you've never had ventilated seats before, it is well worth the purchase. For long drives or especially hot days, especially as you can see, this is a black interior, it can get really hot. And if you drive long distances, you know what it feels like to just like stick to the seat when you're done. And a ventilated seat, even at the lowest setting, really helps take the edge off the heat and the sweat of sticking to a black interior. One feature I've seen more and more manufacturers start toying around with is the idea of street sign recognition. So there's a forward-looking camera, and if it sees a street sign, it could be a yield sign, a stop sign, a construction ahead sign, it will display that sign on the dashboard in an attempt to make sure that you see the sign and you're aware of it. So here I am stopped at a stoplight, and you can see the yield sign on the dashboard, and that's because the RAV4 recognized that there's a yield sign for a pedestrian crossing. So here I am after my first drive to work. I have a 24-mile commute. The RAV4 Hybrid is estimated to get 41 miles per gallon in the city, 38 highway. In my 24 miles, I have my phone here. I'm going to show you my dashboard. In my 24 miles, I've averaged 51.2 miles per gallon. Now, if you notice, trip A says 53.6. I forgot to reset that, so ignore that. I drove about 24 miles. But to see 51.2 miles per gallon is pretty impressive. If I remember correctly from other Toyota vehicles, they've always been very good about dividing the steering wheel into, I think it's usually music on the left side, cruise control and other vehicle settings on the right side. Not any longer. You have display settings and functions on the left, along with volume up and down, and then you have cruise control, dynamic radar cruise control, lane keep assist, and then audio mode and track forward, track back, or tuning forward, tuning back. So they've split up the audio between the left and the right, volume on the left, tuning on the right. Any level of consistency here is just that all of the audio buttons are on the bottom, but otherwise they seem to have split the audio instead of keeping it all with one thumb, which I think, if I remember correctly, I really liked that layout. The RAV4 Hybrid has different driving modes pre-programmed into it. And here next to the shifter is a rotary knob that allows me to change from normal to eco to sport. Now what these three do is it changes the algorithm of the accelerator pedal to the amount of effort put out to the engine or the electric motor. And eco is a little softer response. Sport is a much more aggressive response. Normal, I think it's just like a 45-degree angle, sort of pressure on the accelerator equals amount of effort to the engine. Now additionally, there is a button that's marked as EV mode. Now this doesn't turn your hybrid into an electric vehicle. What it does is it allows you to, for very short periods, suppress the engine and just run on battery alone. Not for long distances because the battery's not that big, but it's great for shuffling cars in a driveway, things like that. There is also a button marked trail. Not a lot of trails around here in the Chicagoland area, so I haven't had a chance to test that. But it's there. Just wanted to point out that you do have different drive styles, and you can just use them as you see fit. I'll tell you what, it's 80 degrees outside and very humid. I've got the climate control set to 77 just to give it a little trickle, and I've got the ventilated seats on medium. I'm extremely comfortable. So this is my drive home on day one of having the RAV4 Hybrid, and I always try to scrutinize the hybrid transition from engine to battery and battery to engine. And Toyota has pretty much tuned this in on all of their cars. I mean, after all, they started with the Prius in 1997, bringing it to the United States in 2001, and the Gen 2, of course, in 2004. So they have a lot of experience with these transitions back and forth. And in the RAV4, it is pretty much inconceivable. The transition is really smooth, and to be honest, I don't even think about it because I don't feel it. And the car just does what it needs to do. If you listen to podcasts during your regular commute, like I do, make sure and check out the What Drives Us podcast. Every week we release a new show, and you can find us on Stitcher and iTunes and Google Play and TuneIn and possibly a couple others that I'm forgetting. Just check wherever you get your podcasts, look for What Drives Us, and if we're there, make sure you subscribe. There's a Qi charger in front of the shifter in the center console. If you're not familiar with Qi charging, it's QI, pronounced Qi, and that's the wireless phone charging that more and more phone manufacturers are implementing. And even if your phone doesn't support wireless Qi charging, there's a USB plug right there. So it's a really good place to rest your phone while it might be plugged in if you're Bluetooth streaming or whatever. And also what's really nice is that it's a pretty deep well. So when the phone is in there, you don't have to worry about it shaking around or flying around or whatever. It's a good little resting place. You also have auxiliary in with a 3.5 millimeter plug if you have something you want to plug in your audio. Also the 120 volts, what we call a cigarette lighter outlet, that you can add additional USB chargers or things like that. Let's talk pricing real quick. The RAV4 Hybrid comes in 3 trim levels. The XLE is $29,650. The XSE, $33,850. The Limited, which is what I'm driving now, is $35,850. The Limited is pretty nice, and I have to say for $35,850, I would consider this a pretty good buy for what you get in the Limited package. It has a lot of creature features. The ventilated seats, I can't go on enough about how much I love ventilated seats, and just the overall fit and finish, in my opinion, I think is worth, honestly, $35,000. I just remembered I wanted to mention that one of my biggest gripes about the previous generation of RAV4 was the placement of the cup holders. I felt they were gregariously stupid, and that's being polite. They were up underneath the center console on the far side of the gear shifter, and in my opinion that made it incredibly difficult to put a mug in or take a mug out. With this generation of RAV4, Toyota moved the cup holders back where they belong, between the armrest and the gear shifter, making the cup holders a lot more accessible and making your cup of coffee a lot easier to reach when you're on your way to work. My time with the RAV4 Hybrid is coming to an end, so I'm going to try and wrap this up, and I think I'm going to just have to record a whole bunch of stuff and splice it together in editing. So I'll try to make it as smooth as possible. Sorry if it comes out as a little choppy. The RAV4 in a nutshell is, well, it's a RAV4. And let's face it, you know what you're going to get when you drive a RAV4. Toyota's been making this car for a couple of decades now, at least. So they've really dialed it in. Even when they make little subtle changes here or there, it's still a RAV4. They've added some creature features, they've updated some things, but for the most part, this is a RAV4. It's a stable, capable SUV. Hybrid-wise, it gets, in my opinion, very good mileage, rated at 41, and I was getting close to 50, if not more, every time I drove it. Comfort-wise, it's easy to drive, a lot of room for the driver, the passenger seat is very roomy, and a lot of room in the back. All in all I can say about the comfort of the RAV4 is roomy. I do have some general design questions. I mentioned the big-ass air conditioning knobs here, the buttons on either side of the touchscreen, but otherwise it seems very well laid out. With the heated ventilated seats, the electric hatch, I mean, honestly, I'm having a hard time finding anything to critique or criticize about the RAV4. Like I said, Toyota's really dialed it in. So yeah, I mean, when I learned I was getting a RAV4 Hybrid, I was excited because I knew they had fully redesigned the vehicle. Now that I've driven it a few times, I realize that even if you wrap it in a new shell, it's still a very familiar RAV4. These days, every major manufacturer is making SUVs of various sizes. And if you're looking for something that is affordable, comfortable, familiar, and easy to drive, the RAV4 certainly should be on your list. And if you're looking to reduce your overall fuel consumption, seriously consider the Hybrid. Like I said, Toyota really downplayed the hybridness of the RAV4, and it gets really good mileage, which will reduce the amount of money you end up paying for fuel. And with that, I think I've run out of things to say about the RAV4 Hybrid. I hope you found this video to be informative and possibly entertaining. And if you have, make sure and give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in alternative fuel vehicles and the future of transportation, make sure you subscribe to the What Drives Us channel. If you have any comments or questions, go ahead and post them in the comments section. I try to reply to as many comments as I can. Thanks for watching all the way to the very end. Once again, I'm Tony Schaefer from What Drives Us, and this is my ride-along review of the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid.